Have you read the Josephus yet? You should. Why, you may ask? History is repeating itself. The scriptures state, there's nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:9.
Thank you, Yahuah.
All praises to the Most High.
He gave up his life
We owe you everything.
so we could have life.
Good morning, Mishpachah, Bukatav, Bakatub, however you pronounce it, enunciate it, whatever dialect you're using, we know it means the same thing. And we're not here to fight about that. But blessings unto you. All praises to the Most High. I hope that you have a productive day. And Most High bless you always. And His Son, Yahushua HaMashiach. All praises to Yahuah. So, we just got finished wrapping up the Feast of Dedication, also known as Hanukkah. And something that was pricking my heart, which I've known this for years and I've talked about it for years, but I just never put it on video because obviously this YouTube channel is brand new. But I always talked about people. A lot of people, they miss the point. You always see people preaching and teaching about the victory of the Maccabees over the Greeks. But a lot of times, I think a lot of brothers and sisters miss the point. Yes, they're not only rededicating the temple, the physical temple, back to Yahuah, but it's a shadow of things to come, because now that Christ and Mashiach has defeated death in his resurrection, right? That temple was taken down after that. So with that being said, if we're supposed to put the laws in our hearts and our minds now, or they should be in our hearts and our minds now, then we're supposed to live by it, because it's always in our hearts and our mind. And with that being said, is we know our body is a physical habitation of a temple and of a tabernacle, right? Because if you understood what the Feast of Dedication really is, it was a celebration, not just the victory over the Greeks, but it's because they didn't get a chance to celebrate Sukkot. And that's why it's also 8 days long. And that's the beauty of Hanukkah. The Feast of Dedication, there's a lot more to it. So as you saw in the beginning of the video, there's nothing new under the sun. But I think a lot of people really miss the understanding that when you read the book of Maccabees, it explains a lot of details of what's going to happen to our Mishpachah in the end times, right before the second coming of our Mashiach. So in order to understand this, we have to understand that this was literally how and what is going to happen in the future, because everything's a shadow of things to come when we read in the scriptures. Think about it, Mishpachah. We don't eat pork. We observe the Shabbat. We follow the dietary law. We keep all the feast days. We say no to paganism. And at all costs, most of us anyway, a lot of people be really laxing. And sometimes we have to do some self-reflecting by the law, so we can look at ourselves in the mirror to see exactly how self-examination will extract, or at least foretell, the sins that we may be committing. That's why Paul, or should say Saul, he said, if it wasn't for thy law, I wouldn't have known what sin was. But with that being said, this young woman that I accidentally ran upon in YouTube, and I'll put in the link description below, I will put her YouTube channel, so you can go ahead and follow her. she acknowledges this same exact thing. And I thought it was awesome because this has been on my mind for many mornings for the last few weeks. And I always wanted to put it on video and put it on record. I just never did. But seeing this video this morning about what she was talking about was a strong conviction that, hey, stop procrastinating and let's get this done. But first, we're going to get into the scripture real quick, and then I'm going to show you exactly what she was talking about. So we're in the first book of Maccabees, brothers and sisters, and we're in chapter 1. And I'm going to start off at verse 21. And we'll go ahead and read from there. And entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar and the menorah of the light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread and the pouring vessels and the vials and the censers of gold and the veil and the crown and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels, also the hidden treasures which he found. And he had taken it all away. He went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. Therefore there was a great mourning in Yasharah, and in every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned, and the virgins and the young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. And the land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Yahuah or Jacob was covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector to tribute unto the cities of Yahuah, and then came unto Yeshurun, which is Jerusalem, with great multitude, and spoke peaceable words unto them. But all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city and smote it very sore, and destroyed much of Yasharah. And when he had taken up the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and the walls up on every side. But the women and children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. And then they built on the city of David, which is the great strong wall with the mighty towers that made it stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. And they stored also the armor of the victuals, and when they had gathered together the spoils of Yasharulim, they laid them upon there, and they became sore and snare, for it was a place to lie in the wait against the sanctuary and the evil adversary of Yasharah. So thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it so much that the inhabitants of Yerushalayim fled because of them, whereupon the city was made the habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her. It's talking about Jerusalem. And her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Shabbats into reproach, her honor into contempt. As it had been in her glory, it was her dishonor increased, and excelling was turned into mourning. Now I want you to take into context what was being said. It's talking about the ransack of Jerusalem. And sorry if I butchered the Hebrew names of Jerusalem. I apologize if I did. And with that being said, you can see what's happening. They're being slaughtered, and it talks about how he spoke peaceable things, which if you read that, we see a reference in that in Revelations, right? When it talks about the Antichrist and how he's going to speak about peace, and then all of a sudden, comes destruction. Of course, I'm completely paraphrasing, but that's not what this is, the scripture we're focusing on. But that's definitely something that goes along with what we're saying because there's nothing new under the sun. With that being said, I really recommend to you to read the first book of Maccabees and the second, and there is a third and fourth if you want to go that far, but definitely read 1 and 2 for sure. It shows the history of the Greeks with Israel and Jerusalem and what happened there. And then if you have the Josephus, it talks about these encounters there. And it's very important to keep, because what this young woman is about to explain to y'all is something that goes deeper into first and second Maccabees, when she's talking about the examples of how important the law and the Sabbath was to what was happening. So hearken to her words, and I encourage you to read this yourself so that you can have understanding on what's going on, and take heed that the true believers of Yahuah in Yahushua HaMashiach will be persecuted for the same things that happened to many of the Israelites in the book of Maccabees. Shalom, Mishpachah. I love you. Yapah. Puro amor. Kwam Yasharala.
Can we please just talk about the law for a minute? And before I begin, let's address the elephant in the room. Yahushua, whom the world calls Jesus Christ, he did away with the law. The law is done away with. Yeah, the sacrificial law is done away with. If you say the law is done away with, I'm sorry, I think you just don't understand the new covenant, because the whole point of the new covenant was that the law would be written on our hearts. Yahushua was our atoning sacrifice. It's the sacrificial law that is done away with. You don't need to go to a Levitical priest and have him burn a bull for you. Okay, that's why we have Yahushua. That's why he died. But I am in the book of Maccabees at the minute, and oh my word, these people be putting us to shame. This morning I was reading about Hebrews who, when the Greeks were oppressing them and trying to take away their culture and abolish all of their laws, still fought so hard and still was so stubborn to keep the laws of Yahuah. They were sneaking into the cave to observe the Sabbath privately. Some Greek leaders found out about it and came and burnt them all alive, because they wouldn't defend themselves, because they held the Sabbath to be that sacred that they wouldn't fight for their lives because it was Shabbat. There was 2 women who had their sons circumcised. Their babies were marched around the city with them, hung by their chests, and then they were thrown off the edge of a wall for keeping the laws of Yahuah. Okay, and then there was another guy called Eliezer who was forced to eat pork, and then his friends, who were of high stature, offered him a clean meat that he could pretend to eat in the place of the pork, so that the Greek leaders thought that he was eating the pork, when in reality he wasn't eating the pork. But he wouldn't even do that. He chose death. He didn't want the younger generations to see him, who has lived so faithfully by the laws of Yahuah his entire life, up to 90 years old. He didn't want them to think that he was now turning his back on all of that. He wanted to set an example, so he chose to die. He chose to die rather than eat the swine's flesh, or even pretend to eat the swine's flesh. And then here we are, taking the laws lightly. And I am guilty of this. Like, we really go right up to the margin of what is sin and what isn't sin. We will bend the laws to fit with what we feel like doing. Oh, well, I'm not like actually eating pork properly. There's just a little bit of gelatin in these sweets. Oh, I kept Shabbat last week. It's all right if I go out and, you know, just skip Shabbat this week. And let's just address this quickly before you say, well, since they were so steadfast in their ways, why didn't Yahuah deliver them? Because this was his way of punishing them for beginning to meddle in sin. And if you read the book of Maccabees, this concept is explained in much greater depth. Please, if you have not, go and read Maccabees. It's very, very inspiring. And please don't take the laws of Yahuah to be a light thing. They are not there to restrict you. They are there to show you how to live your life to the fullest. Your creator knows you, knows what's good for you, and he knows what's not good for you, and that's why we have the laws.
Thank you, Yahuah.
All praises to the Most High.
He gave up his life
We owe you everything.
so we could have life.